Show starts in 1 minute. Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family.
Like 9 out of 10 film stars, Raquel Welch uses Lux Beauty Soap.
Well, no, I like to be a woman and a man to be a man, you know.
We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. Bring your friends. There are always wonderful new pictures to see. We hope you have a wonderful time.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Bitter Online Incels Complaints About the World, I guess, or the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. You may notice I am all by my lonesome right now. Ludwig Path will be joining us shortly, but I figured I'd sneak off early here and get here on time, and he'll join us in a few minutes. He was running a bit late. Nordan under the chat says, on time, impossible, where's Walrus and what have you done with him? I'll have you know, Nordan, on that I am very rarely the reason for any delay. Sometimes it's technical difficulties, but it's usually not on me. I'm usually very much ready to go at least 10 minutes before. Fubar201 says, the evening is dark and bitter cold. The neighbors' children in the yard have stopped screaming. Maybe they finally went inside, or they have frozen. In spring they will scream again. Thus doth the wheel of time turn. There we go. Ludwig Path, welcome back on the show.
Hello, everybody. Fashionably late, but not too late. So I don't know how much I missed.
I think you did reasonably well. I think we're just like, we started like a minute ago.
I came in, you did some dramatic reading of a comment. So I felt, damn, we've gotten too far into it already. I can't.
You started reciting poetry, yeah. So anyway,
some guys asking about the Antifa hit list here. I couldn't find. I did not find myself on that hit list, but I mean, there's a lot of people who aren't there that are like famous in our circles.
Yeah, there are. I don't think we're nearly big enough to be included on that.
I don't think we're loud enough or obscene enough.
That too.
So we're not, immediately going to be caught up in it, I think.
We're going to have to do some changes in 2024 Ludwig Path because
I give it enough time.
This is not working. I mean,
the New Year's resolution is going to be
we're going to have to sell out next year because there's so much on like the penis pills and the timeshares and the there's courses. We can make courses. I see you've been tweeting about courses.
Yeah, no, job stacking is the new trend here. I looked at
job stacking. Yeah,
I don't want to laugh at
crypto
or McIntyre, but we're I guess when you make it, you have some like particular sponsorships, right? So I'm going to try to do 3 jobs at the same time now. I'm getting a guy to teach
selling
me,
water filters or something.
And Gold's shares, of course, is the
Gold. Yes, of course. Yeah. Or what's that? There's this weird, where you basically buy like a piece of an art piece. Like you buy a fund that owns an art piece. Have you heard about those?
Yeah, I've seen like some of these startups that you crowd fund a piece of art.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, it exists. I guess I don't see the point in doing it. Like,
no, it seems like there's way better way to sort of invest your money. Yes.
I mean, I've talked about it before, but you have a lot of these financial products where it's like, okay, technically you have a stock or a security that represents something you want, but you don't get any of the advantages of that actual thing.
No.
That are the reason that people want it in the first place. I mean, the first one was like the gold securities that Ben Shapiro is shilling constantly, and like, I mean, for these like doomsday prepper nuts, they want gold because they think they're actually going to trade that stuff when the world falls apart, right? When the apocalypse hits,
Right.
they're going to walk around with small pieces of gold and trade it for food. Or
you're gonna show up and say, "Hey, I would like my 1/3 of a gold bar," and they're just gonna say no.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Shapiro sold me gold securities, so I'm just going to call Goldman Sachs and redeem them or something after the zombie apocalypse. That's not going to happen. So they're pretty useless. The other one is like these real estate shares. So these kind of real estate securities, which, I mean, people get the idea that, okay, I want to invest in real estate, right? And you get those guys like these gurus like Grant Cardone who will promote this idea, oh, you can buy into like this fund that I have based on real estate. But I mean, it's real estate is good because if you own it, you get tax deductions and like various other benefits that come with owning a tangible piece of property. If you just own a security based on the value of that stuff, then it's really just an underperforming stock. So it just sucks. You don't get any advantages of having it at all. It's just like a low return on investment opportunity. And like with these art stuff as well, it's I mean, I guess part of the value of having this art is actually having the art piece that you can look at on your wall or something, just getting something out of it. But if you're just owning a piece of it, and I mean, what do you even do with that?
I think the sales pitch is that art is very stable, but then, again, it's like with the gold, like, how are you going to cash out, right?
Well, yeah, I hope it works. I assume like government bonds are more stable, but what do I know, right? So much of this of these like finance startup stuff, the people who have the company, I mean, they might be able to sell the company and make some money, but none of the investors are going to get anything out of this. Like, it's going to be a lot of up and down, a lot of effort and money put into getting what you could get on like a government bond or something. For most people, that's the sad reality.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do something like that, it's better to just, hitch yourself to something safe, even though you might not agree with it. Okay. Well, let's do some more fun stuff before we get into the topic of today. And I'm gonna have to yet again call out the most subversive person on the online right, one Jay Burden, the Beaver Man himself, because his incredibly annoying retweets keeps popping up in my Twitter feed whenever I go on my follow tab, which is usually where I hang out. But it's getting to the point now. Hang on a moment, I'll share my screen, where he's actively sort of feeding into the content treadmill of my timeline. So Jay Burden here has reposted something which then generates responses from someone like Ryan Turnipseed, which is happening in real time on my timeline. So, Burden, this is your final warning. You have to stop. Your power is too great.
No, I mean, it's funny stuff. Of course, I'm wondering how much of it is real. The thinking atheist. It's just such a cliche.
I feel like the entirety of Twitter has just sort of derailed into baiting. Like, everyone is just trying to bait everyone else into responding.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if we're on like the Handmaid's Tale stuff, I saw like Dave just retweeted some post about a homosexual couple in New York that had sued the state because they wanted the right, sort of a guaranteed right for a surrogate mother or something. And he said that it'll be the homosexuals that implement the Handmaid's Tale before the right wing. Basically, that's where we're going. So like in other Twitter news, I just caught that like Peter Seihan is going to leave Twitter as well. So we're going to have like no lefties.
We're going to have to
on Twitter now. It's really going to be an echo chamber.
The lefties are going to be purely AI generated from now on. Well, it's good to know.
We just need lefty bots to keep us entertained here, because the real ones are just all left there. They're unhappy that he basically said that his feed wasn't CIA curated enough for his taste. So we're it's getting too much of the Russian ops instead. I mean, it's a hard knock life.
I've started getting some of that as well. The Russia stuff, the based Russian sort of like propaganda videos and stuff like that. Let's see here. The other thing I wanted to just play real quick was something that Leo Borealis actually put me onto this week. Or I think it might even have been today. I don't remember. Which is this video here about an apartment. Well, it's a house for $1,000 a month. So, just for a moment, so people can sort of convert that currency in their head, you can have access to this house in San Antonio, which I assume is somewhere in California.
You asked for it, and here it is. The most affordable home in San Antonio, Texas. Let's check it out. All right, guys, so
I mean, the shape of the house is very silly. It's literally, it's literally the pod.
we got here is a tiny home. You have a little breakfast nook here.
Oh, it's a tiny home, guys. That's what all the Zoomers and millennials are on about, right?
And you have a full kitchen. You have a sink, dishwasher.
That's a feature, by the way, a full kitchen. It's not an expectation.
Stove, and you have space for a fridge.
It looks like a doll's house, right? At least from the outside. Like you sort of,
yeah, it does. It's a storage unit.
Refrigerator. All right, guys, so we're in the bedroom. It's small, but it's affordable. All right, guys, so this is going to be a 2-story home. It's going to be over 600 square feet, 2 full baths, and it's going to have this loft area here. Would you live here for $1,000?
$1,000 a month. That is something. I'm trying to think. I seem to recall that when I was in university, I rented an apartment that was about that size of that house. Probably not, the total lot size, but in terms of like the square feet of the house. And I'm trying to think back on how much I paid. It must have been less than $1,000 a month.
Well, a lot has
I
happened
lived there
since
for like
then.
a year, right?
Inflation really hurts bad, and I think this might be an expensive part of Texas as well.
Most likely. Oh, it's Texas. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And if it's California, it's even cheaper, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, like just looking at it, I mean, I could put on my right wing hat and sit and laugh at the pot or whatever. But just like being realistic, this is not a horrible offer for for the overall value.
No, I think it's kind of the thing where, for a young, or I guess a young millennial or an older Zoomer, right, entering sort of the market here. I mean, it's more just sad that this is what you have to choose from, right? You have to live in this storage unit next to all the other storage units because that's pretty much the only thing you can afford, right?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I was thinking about like maybe Mexican and Black low-income families who would live in something like that.
Maybe,
yeah. I didn't think about this sort of Zoomer-centric lens. I mean, at least it's not a favela, right? There is not this kind of. It is crammed, but it's not totally cramped. At least there's a little bit of space.
No, this is made to house. This might be made to house if it's like. Depends where in Texas, because there's a lot of places in Texas are doing quite well in terms of like software engineering and stuff, right? So this might just be some weird sort of like suburb meant to house software developers, like young Asian dudes.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I'm just saying it could have been a lot worse. Out of everything to get upset about, I'm not losing sleep over this one.
Richard, no, it was more funny than anything else. Richard Crook says he didn't show if it had a toilet. You have to do your business in the shower, yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan there. It's the Texas housing regulations, that's enough. You just need one hole that goes into the drain.
Very nice. All right. Well, do I want to do more incel posting, or should we talk about the things we're actually here to talk about? What do you think?
Did you have any good incel stuff?
I had did you see the Manchester nightlife TikTok video going around?
I did not. Let's watch that.
let's do our weekly bashing women video. To me, it was more like one of those things where, well, at least I'm not living in Manchester, kind of moments. I don't think sound is required here. No, it's just background noise. It's just some guy who films like animal documentary videos about like women going out in Britain. And I remember sort of this like British women sort of caking on too much makeup, looking absolute trash. It's like a stereotype that goes back as long as I can remember. Is that true for you as well, Ludwigpath?
I remember seeing sketch shows that are poking fun at this stuff, and probably having seen it a few times traveling abroad. But yeah, there's something about these dresses as well. It's
some of those dresses are very something. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. It's just, British women in their natural habitats.
It's just a little too much, I think, for some of these, and they just don't have the let's just say the appeal and the figures to do this.
They don't have the grace to pull off the outfits they're wearing.
Perfectly grace,
and the problem.
As you see, like the postures, I think it's the problem. The postures and the walking and like their general movement pattern. It's the clothing. It says like it's some kind of like top LA model or something, but they're just kind of awkward in their movements, kind of,
and they're usually
flat-footed and crooked
absolutely back, trashed as well.
Yeah,
on like breezers or something, right?
I mean, I've been, the last times that we were in the UK, it's so cold over there. It's like this. It's always just kind of like humid, slightly. What do you call it? It's not humid, but it's a little bit wet-ish.
Yeah.
Cold thing. I mean, I don't know why you wear
foggy,
that.
Like the sea fog is always rolling in, right?
It's always foggy. It's always a little bit rainy, and I don't know why you'd wear these kind of like two pieces of cloth that are so tightly sitting. I can't imagine how cold they'd be, but
damp is the word we're looking for. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, moist. I think maybe that's
moist. Yeah. Well, so that was, a mirror into an alternate reality or something. I don't know what to say about this. I have, in terms of like my own life, I've always maintained, and it's one of the things actually where my wife has told me, like, I never really agreed with your point, but lately, like the past couple of years, I've come around to it, and I've always been like, the worst. There's nothing that's more ugly in life than like a very drunk woman, right? Some guy like shuffling down the street, clearly drunk, is, I mean, it's not pretty, but it has a certain charm to it. But an absolutely trashed woman is one of the most aesthetically ugly things that can ever exist.
I don't know if I said that, but I've certainly thought it out loud. But I've always felt that way. It's just so annoying. It's not just ugly; it's just annoying.
As I said, like a couple of years ago, I think when I met my wife, she was kind of like, "Well, no, I think men are kind of stupid, when they get drunk, and it's not very pretty." But she's come around to the idea that, all right, from an aesthetics perspective, from like a weird philosophical perspective, the man sort of gets away with it, but the woman doesn't, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, what are the philosophical reasons that women can't get away with this stuff?
I don't know. Maybe they're supposed to know better. I'm not quite sure.
One point. I mean, they can't carry themselves drunk, which is obvious, right? I mean, and a lot of the side effects that comes from the alcohol and dosing alcohol at larger amounts. That sounds weird, but it's let's say like the loss of control of movement. Loss of like certain bodily functions, loss of speech function and stuff. It's not funny for a woman to be slurred in her speech. It's not funny for a woman to fall over and like hurt herself. It's not funny for a woman to not walk properly. It's a little bit different for a man. The slapstick with women is not the same thing. You know, it
It's not,
just
no.
isn't. So, and I mean, you should get that stuff instinctively, and if you don't, then you don't belong in these spaces, at least in my view.
No,
Then you
to
should
me,
just
it's
be
just a
like a
straight up
Vosh
sort
viewer or
of.
something.
It's a matter of taste, right? It's a disgust trigger, right?
It's a disgust. I think it's a sort of instinctual thing as well, in terms of just trying to protect. Like you care about women. You're actually trying to protect women, and you don't want to see them trashed, injuring
Totally out
themselves,
of control,
demeaning
vomiting,
themselves in that
showing
in that
their
way. Yeah.
vagina to the world, right? Because their skirt is hiking up.
Yeah, and like using swear words, like not minding their language and stuff. It's all very
And
antithetical to
also,
what you want a
women who
woman to
get
be.
drunk usually don't get like funny. Men who get drunk usually either just get into a like I want to brawl mode, or they get funnier, right? Women just get more like sad or angry usually when they get drunk.
Or yeah, just obnoxious. Generally, it's just embarrassing and annoying every time. It's yeah, like you said. I mean, but they have nothing to go on because they aren't funny. So I'm sorry, they just aren't funny to begin with. There's nothing to go off. I think in their own heads they're like really funny, but nobody else thinks that. It's just really annoying.
Fubar says some men brood. Well, but women don't brood when they get drunk, right? As I said, the outcomes for a man, like I'm not saying it's very cool to be trashed as a man, but there's a different aesthetics outcome of it than it is for a woman, right? So brooding is a mode of being that befits a man, even when he's drunk. It's not necessarily attractive, right? But it is a mode of being.
Yeah, some women are attracted to brooding men. There are
Right.
no men that are attracted to these loud, obnoxious women, unless they're trying to take advantage of them. But
Which is that's a play in modernity, right?
it
That's a
is.
way to go. I don't recommend it, but you can be wildly successful if you just want to have a lot of sex, I guess. All right, that's enough of that. I've called this episode "The Longhouse Goes to Class" because I've collected a bunch of articles that has been going on in a newspaper in Norway recently, one of the larger ones. So it's going to be hyper specific to Norway, but I'm hoping that maybe some people in other European countries can think about if this is happening there as well. And this paper has done a deep dive sort of thing on school violence, which is basically students harming teachers in various ways. So let me start by just bringing up the first article. I'm just going to scroll a bit here because the article is being like fancy and showing pictures and stuff, and I just want to get to the text. Let's see here. I am looking for this one. So this is part 1 of 3, and we're probably not going to read all of it. I might read some of it, but we'll click through all 3 of them, and then we'll see where we end up. And we have a couple of others articles that's related to school and a child's performance in modern classrooms. So what we're talking about here isn't necessarily the fact that there have been clashes between teachers and students. I mean, I think that's something that's always happened in one way or another, but the sort of day-to-day terror, as it says here, and the increase in the cases over the past 5 years or something has been quite incredible. So I'm just going to scroll past the introductory, sort of just setting the scene. Aftenposten,
Is this? I did read the article. So is this the first one?
This is the first one, yes.
Yeah. So there you have the deviation stuff. I didn't know what I had to look a little bit more into this. I've heard the language a lot of times, but there is what you call HMS, this sort of what do you call it, this kind of environmental regulations, or let's just see, health regulation, general
Yeah,
stuff
it's
that
health
applies
regulation.
to.
It's not OSHA because that's something they use on like work sites and stuff, but it's the stately sort of bureaucratic department where you lodge complaints, more or less, right? As a teacher.
Yeah, and of course this applies to private workplaces as well. I've been in touch with this stuff, but it was really more about let's say breakdowns in the workplace and stuff. I had, I mean, even at a white collar job, right? We had this kind of what do you call this, open office, right, with glass doors and glass windows and just
Right.
glass everywhere. And then there was a stairway that was surrounded by glass on the railings, and the glass just kind of fell down and it fell on the head of one of the employees, and then you had to file one of these
Jesus.
deviation
Yeah.
registrations, right? Because that's the type of thing that you typically do. I don't know what came of that, but it's something that you're supposed to do from an HR perspective, at least.
Right, so that's basically what this is, and this paper has gained access to all incidents of violence and threats reported by the employees of, and let me be clear, this is purely in the Oslo area of Norway, which is of course the largest in terms of population, but this is purely in the city of Oslo. So from 2017 to 2022, there are 23,000 messages from primary, secondary, and upper secondary schools across the city that are incidents of violence or threats. And I think there's a statistic somewhere in this article which says that that rounds out to about 20 a day across all the schools. Let's see here. Astrid, the teacher they're interviewing, calls it an everyday terror, and she's far from alone in reporting such incidents. So
I don't know how many schools that are in Oslo in total, but like 20 a day.
That's
quite a bit.
You know, it's not enough that this number would make sense, right? There's not enough schools in Oslo for this number to make sense at all. It's far too high.
It's not a deviation if it's 20 times a day, right? That means that there's some
Right.
schools that are filing one probably every day, I would imagine.
Might
Oslo
be.
is like, it's a big city in Norway, but it's not that big. And
exactly, right.
And like I said, this type of the stuff that you're supposed to use the deviation for, it's like if something breaks, like the example with the staircase that fell down or something. I mean, these are apparently like everyday events that you know have just not been. I mean, like you're seeing in these articles, the system is just sort of not ready to handle this. Where you've had this kind of development where they're sort of moving away from, you know, it's like this Whig history almost, is this sort of better angels of our
Right.
nature, where things are just getting less and less conflict oriented, less violence in the schools, and it's more feminized.
Well, to the point where you can have some like 80-year-old kid who's just going to go Nietzschean on your ass to control your entire life, right?
Yeah, this is the Demolition Man problem, right? The
yeah,
with the Wesley Snipes kids that are starting to show up at school, and nobody knows how to deal with this. But yeah, you can keep reading so that the
I'm just going to translate some of the deviations here, just for the hell of it. The first one here, the description says he peed in his hand and threw urine in the face of an employee. The next one is threat. Let's see here. A rowdy student threatened to bring knife the following day to kill me. Headbutting, which resulted in nosebleeds and a split lip. Now, this could be, because this is from, let me double check here, primary, secondary, and upper secondary. So we're talking about, you know, these things are happening from kids age like 6 to, what is it, 15, 14?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
14, I guess.
14, yeah. 15, I think. 14, 15, yeah. Let's see here. A few people go to become teachers and imagine that they will be beaten every day at work, says Astrid. She feels that she was never educated for the day-to-day life that many teachers face. So here we have, it's an average of over 20 incidents of violence and threats are reported in the Oslo school system. And I don't know why it's not tallying up. It was something like 227 reports that were escalated to the police. And again, I'm not sure why it's not calculating. I think it's a translation that's missing or like messing with the thing. 2/3. Well, this is a bit interesting. 2/3 of the messages are from special schools or schools with special departments. The problem with defining it like that is that I don't know if that means that these are schools for. I don't know how YouTube is on. Can I say certain funny words when it comes to talking about those who are developmentally challenged, like Path on YouTube?
I mean, it's the R word. It's a very vague term here because I don't know what schools don't have special departments anymore. Because
Exactly.
most of them
Every
are
school has some form of special department where they send kids who are quote unquote struggling, and that might not necessarily mean that they have any sort of that
doesn't
they
mean
have
they
Down
have.
syndrome or something like
Yeah,
that, right?
I was thinking the same thing, that they don't have to have some kind of hard condition, but if they are, let's just say, set back in their development for some or another reason, they have to be handled in some way. But I don't know, like, what schools don't have this stuff in Norway anymore. So this paragraph doesn't really tell
It
me
doesn't mean
anything.
anything. Yeah. And the teachers describe, this is something I've seen over and over, a paralyzing helplessness. The teachers try to help as many students as she can, but for some, the difficulties are too great. The politicians say that we must promote the teaching profession, but not many are honest about what it really entails. You can get stress reactions and PTSD from this. In the classroom, violence can occur because reading period ends too early. If Astrid takes the iPad from a student who was not ready, or even in the chaos between a break, a recess, I guess, and class, behind all of these small episodes, there may be children who have trauma, who struggle with relationships, or to regulate their own emotions. Unclear boundaries at home can make it difficult when the adults are deciding what to do at school. One student showed his frustration by kicking Astrid in the shin whenever she was nearby. Hard, depending on how well he hit, of course. When he came from recess, when he was out to lunch break, every day for several weeks. So this guy was kicking this woman in the shin every time she came near him for weeks.
I mean, this Astrid woman must have the patience of a saint, right? I mean, if every teacher was like this, we wouldn't have any problems. So I'm quite impressed at the patience here. I mean, I can say that just related to my own situation. I know someone who became a teacher, and this was not in Oslo, right? But who ended up like being, educated as a teacher and was going to do the first year as a full-time job. Ended up having one of these deviation episodes with violence, right? And ended up quitting because of the fallout of that episode, and has just went into another profession. And they're talking about this as well, like there's newly educated teachers who are just quitting because the problem from this person was that I mean, there's just no routines on how to handle this kind of stuff, and you just get all the blame for it, even though you didn't really do anything.
It wasn't about the kicking, she explained. It's about the paralyzing feeling of helplessness and loneliness in the situation I find myself in. I'm not allowed to take care of anyone, neither the individual students nor the class.
It's not about the shin kicking every day. It's about the paralyzing isolation inside my shins from the kicking. I think it was a little bit about the kicking as well. I think
we can say that it's a bit of both. Yeah. Let's see here. If you have a pupil who's violent over time, you can report it every time, but little happens, she says. It becomes an everyday terror you just have to live with. Here's a new threat that was reported. Threatened violence and the R word, the surprise sexual intercourse.
The other R word, yeah.
Yes. The family should beat up the teacher in question. Their family should beat up the teacher.
Andrew Tate fan.
Right. Andrew Tate fan. That, I mean, reading between the lines of this report, I I've never heard a white person threaten that his family is going to beat me up.
No, they just generally do not do that stuff. I mean,
That just
it's
doesn't
kind of
happen, right?
implicit. It's kind of implicit. I mean, things have declined a little bit, and you have some of these white kids that are getting absorbed into that culture. Like we saw some of those videos of these kind of like, I don't know what you call them, shavs, or the white guys with the black guy clothing.
Yeah,
and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it does happen, but that kind of stuff where it's like, yeah, my family's going to rape you. I'm bringing a knife.
Still, they don't do that honor culture stuff. They just use this, like they just use their clothes and speak their words, right? But they don't do those parts of it.
No. So yeah, I'm reading that. Like, I have a picture in my head of what this kid looks like, and it's very brown. I can say that.
Racist.
Racist.
And then they talk with this guy for a bit, who says that he got no training for any of this. A few years ago, Bjorn Joval sat in front of the PC at one of the city's primary schools. He had just been kicked and punched by a student during recess. In a perfect world, measures are taken after a deviation is reported, and then the situation would be resolved. The reality is very different, Joval explains. He recalls that he had no training on how to report violence. It took a lot of time to just learn how the system works. I'm reasonably okay with IT, but I didn't understand anything. It's horribly designed. There are no routines. Nobody knows how or where to report, says the 31-year-old.
Reddit did not help.
Reddit did not help, no. There are many indications that where do I upvote my report?
The first thing he did was just go on Reddit and just post about it and just got updates.
There are many indications that underreporting is not just a problem at the school he worked at. This is supported by statements from teachers, the education agency, the Norwegian Labor Inspectorate, and so forth and so forth. Some schools have few or no deviations. Others have several hundred. This does not necessarily mean that there is more or less violence in these schools. It may just well be due to different routines for reporting. There are also no systematic differences between schools in the east and west of the city. The reason why they're saying that there is because the Oslo has a east side, west side thing, which is quite common in other European cities, I guess, where one is the rich part and the other is the poor part, historically speaking, of course. Here they actually have a table where you can show how many notifications of deviations that each school has reported during the period, meaning 2017 to 2022. So, I mean, if someone really wanted to go through and find like which schools to stay away from, they can use this one. Okay. I'm just going to keep scrolling. Here we go. The teacher talks about how they start just giving up. You report until you can't be bothered anymore. You just give up. The reporting can have an effect. Parents and teachers band together. Perhaps there's a new conflict that can be resolved. But the youngest children who hit you all the time, quote unquote, she says it's different. Another deviation here. Kicked multiple times in legs. Kicked the teacher multiple times in their legs. Threatened to kill them with a knife. Teachers are feeling helpless and afraid all the time. More and more deviations, etc., etc., etc. I'm not sure if we want to spend more time on this, really. I think the point of the first article has been driven home.
Yeah. I mean, it is an interesting thing that they do mention that, there's been suggestions on changing the laws regarding, the options that you have as a teacher, that you're going to have the right to basically to intervene using force if you think that a student is at risk for harming someone else, which would give teachers a little bit more agency. I think that would be in its place with these things, at least, because now the part of the problem is that there's no framework. They just have this kind of absolute rule that you should never harm the children, right? And you're not allowed to do that in any case. But if they add a clause in there that you can do that to sort of prevent greater harm, then at least they have some grounding to stand on in case they need to defend themselves. Because it's, I mean, to be honest, if it's escalating, they need something, right? I mean, if they're not getting training, you know, I think for
Yeah, the
most
teachers are
people
just
who,
sort of being thrown to the wolves here, right?
yeah,
Uh,
you can't expect people to not react, right? I mean, sometimes you're gonna have to try to, you know, what do you call it? Not disarm these students, but at least neutralize the threat, as they say.
right.
It's this, you know, military police
De-escalation, yeah.
lingo, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, as people, somebody might get hurt. I'm not suggesting that, you know, you try to just like use jujitsu or whatever, but
No, but I
that
mean,
you know,
an appropriate application of, you know, directed force, if we to use that
yeah,
language, right, can usually stop situations with children like that quite early on, right?
I think
They're
so
almost like
too, and
dogs in that way, where you can
they
just give them
might
like a poke and say no, right?
they might get bruised, you know, and at least there's something there that they could use to at least defend themselves with, so that you don't have to just like this ostrich woman just get kicks in the shin every day and then complain that you're psychologically fatigued.
And that's ultimately what's sort of breaking the teachers, right?
Yeah, I don't know how
Um,
many people. The salaries are not great, so you really have to have some type of calling to do this. But I think it would be possible for these teachers to relocate themselves. I mean, but at least that's what I would have done. I mean, it's of course it's very
That's
hard to
hard as
say.
well. It's very
Yeah.
hard to do. Well, it depends on where you are, I suppose. But relocating and getting if you're already at like a 100% work, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Capacity at the school you're at, replicating that in a different school can be usually very difficult. So a lot of teachers don't want to move schools or try to do that, because they end up having to be substitute teachers basically for years before they get established.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they lose tenure or something, I don't know how that works. If you can
I
roll
think
over some
tenure
of the
can
tenure.
transfer, but I've just heard that it's really difficult.
And another thing
Um,
that was in the article I don't think we touched on is the fact that it seems, at least statistically, based on reporting numbers, that like younger teachers are having bigger issues than the older ones. So I think it's a
right.
lot of these kind of neurotic millennials that are coming into the schools that just kind of lack a certain gravity to them that I think the boomer teachers have.
And
That
that is probably very
yeah,
much true. As I said, this, you know, in when I talked about, you know, this uh, application of directed force, I mean, you can do that, you know, not necessarily physically, but you can just establish dominance in other ways, right? And lay out the ground rules for the kids on what is acceptable and what isn't, right?
yeah. I think if
And I'm
you
not saying that their job is easy, but I'm just saying I know of teachers who have been able to do it, right?
yeah,
And
I
who
think
do it
let's
quite
say
well.
you are a manly man and you have some type of, let's say you're some ex-military person or something, you know how to handle yourself in these situations, how to present yourself. I think you're a lot less at risk for this stuff happening to you than if you're some kind of like neurotic millennial woman on SSRIs who just got done celebrating Thanksgiving or something. I mean,
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
Right. So next up, the paper went to the chief executive of all the Oslo schools to talk about, you know, what can be done. Um, and she says, first of all, she says, I think having a vision that nothing will ever happen is completely unrealistic. So the nothing ever happens, bros, was destroyed, by the way. Sorry. No, but
It did
you're
happen.
talking
It
about
happened every day. Yeah.
something happened. It happens every day, guys. I think having a vision that nothing ever happens is completely unrealistic. Children do struggle, and they will continue to do so in the future as well. What she's basically saying is that, you know, we cannot target zero incidents, which is, you know, fair enough. But we can at least do something about the 20 a day, I
Well,
think.
they are targeting. I mean, you know, when it comes to
I
like
think at
the,
least as an ideal goal, you should have zero incidents.
well, you know, with
The fact that
when you
she's
look
saying it
at,
is kind of, you know, she's admitting that they've lost, basically.
but the thing is, I mean, if you look at the law, the regulations in terms of bullying, they are targeting zero incidents. It really does
Yeah.
seem, even considering how little rights the teachers have, they do seem to be targeting zero bullying, for example. It's not something that they've kind of accepted. So it's interesting that they're, you know, the bullying stuff, it's okay, we're going to eradicate it. but we're going to have to put
this
up
one
with
is okay. Yeah.
violence from students. I mean, it's she's basically saying nothing there, in my view. Let's see if there's something else that comes out of this.
She's this entire article. I don't know if you read this one as well, but she's basically saying nothing in the entire thing. Let's see here. So there's a total of 90,000 pupils in the city. Even if the notification system is not perfect, it's better than nothing. Well, I mean, yeah. Okay.
I don't know. Is that true though?
I don't know, honestly.
I mean, let's say if you had nothing, they would just
if you had nothing and the teacher could just do what they want. Yeah.
They would be dealing with it themselves. They would not be waiting for these reports to come back or something. I mean, because that's what they are doing. They're waiting for somebody else to solve the problem.
Yeah.
If there's no reporting system, then of course they just have to find some way to deal with it at the local level, which it would be infinitely better than just sitting and waiting on some bureaucracy to do nothing.
Yeah.
So we're taking another L here.
Another L for the bureaucracy. In 2022, the agency rolled out a training program on violence and threats, mandatory for all 17,000 employees. Today, the principals handle the incidents of violence in a good way, I think, says Gerhardsen. I feel that they take this very seriously, that they both look after the employee and the student. And then the newspaper reporter says, a survey you carried out this spring shows that employees are not satisfied with the follow-up. The investigation from this spring shows that this is not good enough. The school leaders do a great job, and we try to support them on improving. Every notification of deviation must result in action. Do you feel confident that this will happen? Internal controls and reports from the Norwegian Labour Inspection Authority ensure that this works well. We still think that we can do better. That is why we've introduced courses for school leaders that deal with looking after employees after incidents. Oh, Jesus Christ. So now we've moved on to just sort of, we're just going to send the teachers to therapy, right?
Well, I guess it's something, but I don't know even if that's going to help. By the time they get to the therapy stage, I think it might be too late for a lot of them. Like they could have quit already.
Right.
I think by that time, especially if they're new, right? You've already lost them by the time. It's like, okay, I've been kicked in the shins like 300 days in a row or something. Oh yeah, good. I got therapy from it. I don't know how much this will do.
I think women are not fit to be teachers for boys. All the best teachers I had are men, with only one exception. I have one exception as well. A teacher I had in primary school was a woman. She was like an old school teacher, Mrs. Right, Christian, very strict, in many ways very demanding, but also incredibly kind. And we were a lot of boys in our class who were quite rowdy, and some of them, because I grew up in the 90s, right, a lot of them came from Eastern Europe, like Bosnia, etc., right, and came from those war-torn countries and struggled to basically keep a lid on things. But I mean, she just demanded that we did better, and we just did. Every other class struggled, but our class was always acting polite. Always, we had to address her using her last name, do all these sort of old school things, right? But having experienced more informal teachers after, I sort of kind of missed it, right? Because at least up until high school, you do well within those boundaries. High school, of course, when you're full of hormones anyway, your life is all about pushing those boundaries. So having them might be hard, right?
Yeah, of course. I think that it's really the old world that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting with this teacher that you mentioned as well. Like, how many of those women are being educated now? Of these kind of
none, right?
Millennials and Xers who are coming out. I don't think a single one of them is going to come out and be like this sort of super nanny personality.
That's essentially what she was. She was like a super nanny personality, right?
But I agree with Nordan on probably on 90% of the cases. You do have a lot of men who are just dog shit teachers, but they do not have the problem losing respect from boys. Usually,
No,
it's quite
usually
rare.
not. Yeah. Training, safeguarding, and non-conformity management. It quickly becomes abstract words. Blah blah blah. She's trying to demonstrate like how to approach kids because for some reason that tells you about how to do it. In some situations, there's little you can do. We just have to make sure we have good frameworks to handle this. On the other hand, you say that teachers should be supported and feel safe at work, while at the same time, it is possible to avoid serious incidents, yes? Many employees experience insecurity today. They find everyday life unpleasant. We take this very seriously, but if we are to be a good employer, we must also be realistic, whatever that means. Right?
Yeah, getting kicked in the shin is just part and parcel of being a teacher in the modern society. That's kind of
sorry,
what
it's
you're
just,
getting here.
I'm just being realistic, you know?
Well, it's just like this now. We can't do anything.
Concretely, what can a teacher who is subjected to punches and kicks do as the regulations are today? Now we're getting a bit into the laws, right? The current Education Act does not authorize staff to intervene physically with pupils. The Criminal Code, however, allows staff to intervene in a situation to prevent a student harming himself or others, but that access is limited. That basically, but looking at that, I think the Criminal Code basically just means if the student is punching someone else, you can pull them away, right? You're not allowed to punish the student in any way for that action, right? She adds that the government has proposed that the new Education Act should give the teachers statutory right to use physical force against pupils in order to prevent harm. Here it is. 177 of the 23,000 incidents in the data material have been sent to the police. This was the one I was talking about earlier. 49 incidents have been sent to the Norwegian Labour Inspection Authority. Blah, blah, blah. A small child who bites and hits does not necessarily cause permanent occupational injury. All right. Well, it would be better if it didn't. If they didn't bite and kick. And here you go, Luddic Path. The younger people report the most. We see that those who report the most deviations are often assistants and younger teachers. It shows that experience and competence makes you safer. That is why she wants to build good communities so that young people do not feel like they are alone. I think communities for the teachers.
I'm sorry, it's just this rhetoric.
Yeah.
Do you want like community centers as well?
You know, community center.
Yeah, community centers and outreach for the kids.
We just need one more government program.
We just need more money just for their programs.
Oh, it just keeps on going, right? The paper mill just keeps on printing. Yeah. Is it conceivable that older people in the profession give up, quote unquote, on reporting because they feel that it doesn't result in any change? According to the Norwegian Labour Inspection Authority, a lack of training means that employees do not know what to do to prevent violence or handle a situation. Therefore, it is reasonable to believe that the elderly have been through courses and some events that where they have learned techniques for handling and prevention. Teachers describe a feeling
old
of
veteran teachers whose shins are like Muay Thai professional fighters at this point.
My shins have been hardened over years.
Can't feel anything. It's just
so when the old guy comes in and the kids try to kick him, it just bounces off and he looks at him and is like,
the kid is hurt. You know, the kid is like breaks his foot or something by kicking the shin.
He breaks his toe on his shin.
You just got to stick to it, and it works out.
Teachers describe being overwhelmed when they start the profession. They are psychologists, environmental workers, police. What would you say to them? Sorry, what? One moment. Okay. We take their concerns very seriously, and we work to strengthen the team around the school and the student. New graduates leaving is a huge challenge. At the same time, she's keen to emphasize that the vast majority of pupils in Oslo school do not act out. Well, it's not about the vast majority, is it?
Well, I mean, again, it's just waffle nonsense. it's never like the vast majority who does that stuff. I mean, we're basically in the apocalypse if we get there. You know, it's like the majority of kids are gonna kick their teachers or something, then you're in the final days or something.
Right.
But yeah, statistically, it's always going to be a smaller minority who are going to be responsible for larger amounts. Handing out shin protectors
would be more useful.
The problem that I see here is like this kind of I don't know if you'd want to call it a paradox or something, or there's a lack of symmetry here between what the students are getting and what the teachers are getting, not understanding that in a long enough period of time, some of these teachers have to become, or some of these students have to become teachers themselves. And I mean, if you're going to coddle the students and say that they have the right to never be bullied and they're never going to be triggered, and like they're not going to be hurt, or they have to feel safe all the time. But when it comes to the adults, they're supposed to be fine with basically being assaulted every day, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know how this works. If you're going to have to train people.
Yeah, I mean, you literally have to. I mean, you have to at some point teach a kid not to hit people, right? Usually that happens at home at quite an early age, right? But if for some reason it hasn't happened by the time you're in school, I think part of your education, I guess, should be that you taught not to punch the teacher, right? And the teacher should be able to instill that in you.
No, absolutely, but
by any means
the other side of it is
almost,
like these kind of more sensitive kids, right, who's supposed to be able to go through school and just not experience bullying or being isolated or anything like that, and then you're going to become a teacher yourself and be isolated every day. I mean, no wonder these people are just quitting immediately. So there seems to be no kind of logical continuation here in terms of how you're going to learn to deal with. And I mean, that's what they're complaining about. We never learn to deal with this stuff, either explicitly or implicitly.
Yeah, the kids just need more degrees. Some more money for the programs and some more degrees for the kids.
More diplomas, guys. We need more. It's like the medals for the North Korean, dictators or something.
So now we get on to part 3, which in which they talk about. They go to the Education Association, which is a separate body. Because I don't think they deal with sort of the administration of the schools. I think they just deal with let me double check what they do exactly. I am in the wrong tab. Just real quick. Yeah, so they represent the teachers as a union, right? So she says it is serious and unacceptable. Well, that's good. She's the head of the Education Association in Oslo and has been presented with the findings. The goal should be that there should be no incidents of violence or threats in the school. She says, well, not according to the school administrator. She's fine with having like a couple. Today, teachers are the third most exposed group to violence and threats in the working life. Holy shit. It's like you can be technically safer being like a cop, right?
Yeah, I guess that's implied. It would be interesting to know which are right, but, one or two. But I actually think the cops have a likelihood of being safer. Actually, at least there's a lot of jobs that are within security, so that means that there are people who will work as security guards who will see less violence than teachers. It's pretty awful, actually.
You work as like a bouncer or a security guard, and you see less violence. Requesting new systems. Despite the fact that notices of deviations are regularly sent, the review indicates underreporting at several schools. There are several examples of messages that deal with several episodes of violence and threats. The regulations state that each episode must be reported as a separate deviation. Some schools have no or very few deviations. Others have several hundred. Krog believes that the reporting routines have improved in recent years. Teachers have also been trained in how to prevent violence and threats, but it's too difficult to use the system. I don't understand what this focus on, like the system, like the reporting system is too difficult. That's not the issue here. I can't understand how that is the issue here.
my neoliberal brain is like, maybe there's an app solution here that I can make, that I can sell for like
But it doesn't make the
$50
kid
million.
hit you less, right?
No, it doesn't work. It's just like, okay, that's the opportunity here. There's like
Yeah.
someone's
Sure.
going
I
to
mean,
develop
we
a
can make
perfect
an app like and sell it. Get a government contract and make
exactly.
a lot
We
of
get
money.
just get the grants and get the research grants and just rake in the money for this stuff. Nobody's better off, but at least we made the app and we innovated, right? So
Exactly.
we can retire.
The education agency is working on putting in place a new system for reporting the deviations. It should be in place by autumn 2024. Not enough in the past 5 years. Blah blah blah. We've been through this. Let's see here. School leaders rate their own and the school's competence as high. Well, I mean, duh. Teachers and assistants, those who work closest to the students, rate both their own and the school's competence as below average on average. So people in general think that they're doing worse than everyone else. This applies to both how they should prevent incidents of violence and threats from taking place and how such episodes should be handled. Over half the teachers and assistants at ordinary schools, I think what we're talking about here, why are we talking about ordinary schools? I don't know why that's highlighted. State that they have not received training in dealing with violence and or threats in the last 4 years beyond a mandatory e-learning course. So they did get an e-learning course.
They got the apps. Yay. We did it, guys.
This course was done in a plenary sessions at the school, and it's impossible to say how many of the employees have actually completed it. So, I mean, it's okay. So it's all bullshit, right?
Yeah, sorry, this is total bullshit. Fuck e-learning. Seriously, like if I'm behind a secret identity here, but like I've never said this to my boss face, but like fuck all these e-learning courses and all these. Nobody complete. Like you're just sitting scrolling through them anyway, and you get a multiple question thing at the end.
You don't understand. Like Rajesh needs to send me a new like security e-learning course because it's very important that I understand that I'm not supposed to give my passwords to random people on the street.
Yeah, not just click on every email or something. It's very useful stuff. Yeah, I mean, but you just didn't answer these.
I had the stupidest one of those like security e-learning things that I had to go through for one customer I was working for. So you had to do it as part of like the getting all your credentials, right? And there's no consequences to these, right? If you fail, you just take them again, right? And it's this like multiple choice thing, and you get these like fake scenarios where it's like, oh, what would you do in this security situation, right? So one of the scenarios is you're walking, you're outside the office, right? You're on your way to work. Let's say you're like 3 minutes away from the office, right? It was something like that, and you find a USB stick on the ground, right? Or it's just outside the offices or something. What do you do with it, right? And there are a couple of like really obvious ones, like you don't plug it into your computer, right? But that's one of them. The other is like you put it in your pocket, right? Because yay, free USB stick, right? And then there's one where it's like you have to take the USB stick with you and report it to the head of IT, right? And the last one is you just destroy the USB stick. You just smash it, right?
Throw it in the fire. Throw it in the pits.
And I was like, that's probably not right, but I'm gonna click that because I know enough about computer security that if I just destroy the USB stick, it can't do any harm, right? But obviously that is wrong because you're supposed to bring it to the head of security so he can write a report on it.
So he can put it in his computer and then infect the entire system out.
Meanwhile, I could just step on it and solve the problem right there and then.
Yeah, we're drowning in bureaucracy. That's what I do all the time. Like I'm out with my girlfriend and the USB stick slaps my girlfriend's ass. I smash it immediately. That's what I would have crossed off on that thing.
Oh, Jesus Christ! No, that's how you get COVID.
Exactly. Digital COVID or something.
Oh, that's going to be the next thing. We've had
Yeah,
long COVID. Next, we're going to
that's the
get
problem. It's
digital
like
COVID.
if you show it up your ass, then you get the virus. Like, and it takes control of your mind, and you become the Manchurian candidate. So you absolutely don't want to do that.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the three-parter. The last one isn't that interesting. It's more rehashing of the other two as a summary. But I wanted to take a bit of a sidestep for a moment, and present some other findings, because we've talked a lot about the teachers now, but what about the students? And the old adage on the right is all of the ADHD stuff. And there's this article here from the same publication, talking to Tina Brew, who is, let me just double check, I think she is a leader for the right, meaning the party, the right. And she is she one of the top people in that party now?
It says so in the article, but I don't
okay.
have a relationship to her at all, really. So
no, I mean, I don't think she's like a prime minister candidate or anything, but she's in the top, the inner circles, so to speak. I've seen her name before, and she has a son here pictured that is going to start school next autumn. And she says, and it says, Brew knows that the statistics do not play out well for people like him. Because she describes him as an extremely active boy. The son is out going for walks in kindergarten every day. And, next year he's going to be placed at a desk for, 8 hours a day or whatever when you start, right? Probably not 8. You probably start a bit softer, but you get my drift. His body has to stay at resting, and she believes that transition is very rough for many young boys. On top of that, her son is born in November, which is no advantage, according to this article, because that's the crux here. Is that there's been a discussion for a couple of months. I've seen it in various journals about starting kids who are born, because you technically start kids who are born in January and born in like November, right? They start in the same year.
So you're the youngest in your class, then.
You're basically a year younger than everyone else when you start out, which can lead to problems, because she says, I'm worried he will be almost a year younger than many others in the class. We know from various statistics and research that boys in particular can have challenges because of this. Children born late in the year have an 80% higher risk of being put on ADHD medication. And this links to a study done in the American Academy of Pediatrics, which apparently claims this. I haven't had time to do my due diligence and read through that paper, but I'm going to have to take her at her word. But that is an insane statistic. I mean, if you just get born at the wrong time, you just get, here you go. You got to take your meds, right?
I mean, it's very, very incrementing. I mean, the first thing I think is that, of course, if you're a parent who is aware of this, then you probably don't have anything to be worried about. Like, she's probably quite resourceful with her husband, and they can sort of like see this stuff coming ahead of time.
Probably, yes.
And then avoid this kind of getting some kind of like bullshit diagnosis here. But like, looking at that stat, it's very, very bad. It's like this kind of trans parents almost, like, is that meme with like, oh, my son is like playing with women's shoes or something, right. And they're like they're rubbing their hands like, oh, you sure you're not trans? And this is like, when the doctor sees a kid who's a boy's like running in the hallway or something and is standing behind the curtain.
Are you sure you don't have ADHD
pills or something? Yeah. So it's kind of like that meme. They just can't wait to
researchers have pointed out that we may be giving diagnoses and medicines to the most immature children. They run around and they struggle to sit still because they are committed. They are compared to older children. We have to get rid of this overdiagnosis and let children be children, says Brew. Now, this thing here is sort of being attacked from two angles at once, right? You have and specifically in terms of ADHD, because Norway has had a different set of criteria for determining ADHD, I think, is something like that than a lot of other countries. But we have now switched to a more sort of like EU standard. And every other country in the world, more or less, I think, is diagnosing about 10% of its people with ADHD. And Norway historically is diagnosing like 5% of its people with ADHD. I'm not saying that whether or not it's true, I'm not really getting into. I'm just saying that the standards which we are now applying are catching a lot more people in terms of giving them that diagnosis. So that might also be influencing this. Whether or not those standards are correct, I can't really say. Sunday is International Men's Day, although it doesn't get as much attention as Women's Day on 8th of March. There's still a lot to take in. There are many statistics in which boys and men dominate, which are not particularly pleasant. Suicide, violence, crime, and dropping out of school, says Brew. Brew points out that much of what happens at the start of schooling has a lot to say for the rest of your life. You run the risk of falling behind a little and falling behind for many years if you don't get off to a good start, and you can spread further in the school system. She is excited to see how her son will cope. She believes in a more practical approach in some subjects and points out that some of the schools are already very good at this. He loves to do things with his hands, is what she's saying. He's not too happy to sit still and be told things all the time, which can be difficult for him. There's no doubt that a 5-year-old boy will please a little different than a 6-year-old girl, says Brew. Please a little different. That's a very will act differently from a 6-year-old girl. She believes that the problem many small boys face at school are also the root of the outsideness we see today in many young men. She's talking to you guys.
Those who struggle with this is red meat for like the old MRA people, because this is like 25-year-old.
It feels MRA like it, yeah.
Point, yeah.
Those who struggle with reading, writing, and arithmetic have the statistics against them when we look at who does not complete upper secondary school, which is high school, basically. The most important thing that we can do is help more people master basic skills. Among the youngest, it's about being seen for who you are. Too many people experience not mastering what they are supported to, what they ought to in school. It is not surprising if you carry that with you through the schooling. It spreads. Maybe you won't get a diploma or a certificate, and it becomes more difficult to cope with life afterwards. Some will fall out of the social fabric that comes out of being in the workforce. We cannot sit idly by and watch so many young boys drop out of school and not finish. All children come to school with a different starting point from their homes. Some become extra vulnerable. What is that? Oh, I was just wondering why it was capitalized. Some become extra vulnerable to this because they don't receive any good follow-up. This means that the schools have to be even better at erasing societal differences. It is one of the school's most important tasks. You must have the same opportunity no matter what kind of background you have.
It is this is just the conservative woman talking about. Yeah.
Yep, it is. It is not just, center right? It's not just what It's not just what happens at school that could lead to alienation, Brew believes. It's also about poverty, lack of integration, mental health, loneliness, bullying, and dropping out of school. She says a good childhood is essential to prevent alienation in adulthood. Well, duh. Too many people are bullied. Well, thank you. brave stance. You know what an actually brave stance would be to go, not enough people are bullied. Nor should it be the case that families finance to put an end to participation in leisure activities. Okay, and we have to be able to, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know?
Yeah, this is like boilerplate local
this is very boilerplate
politician stuff. Like I'm anti-bullying and I want parents to be able to afford leisure activities like sports for kids or whatever. It's this stuff that you can just say that like who's going to oppose it? Nobody's going to come out and say we should have like more bullying or something. I mean, yeah,
exactly. So now we go to the next article. We're back to the Oslo schools. And this article says that the schoolyard is being used as a toilet. Employees sound the alarm about the situation. The caretaker of the school has to remove litter, feces, and syringes from the schoolyard every morning. The school is considering putting up fences. It smells bad and it looks disgusting. Our students do not deserve this. Maratrana is the Aquas. I think, is that the parent-teacher sort of, or the parents' representative council or whatever it's called? I don't. The Americans have something like it. In a letter to the district in August, she called out a warning about the conditions at one of the central schools. We are concerned. The schoolyard at Møllergata school is used by people who do not have a place of their own to quote-unquote party, abuse drugs, and empty their feces and urine, she wrote. She believes the situation has become worse after the park was closed. A nearby park was closed for rehabilitation in May. The new park will be completed in the spring of 2024. So what she's implying here is basically all of the junkies have migrated from the park to the schoolyard.
And this is what happens when you don't get money for their programs. The community centers are down. We don't have the park to shoot up anymore.
I'm gonna have to go shit in the schoolyard now. Yeah,
the community center where we would shit and everything, and now we have to do it in the schoolyard. I mean, this is what happens with neoliberal. This is neoliberalism, guys. Austerity and cuts, always.
It's been a good ride.
There's no ethical drug consumption under capitalism. There's no ethical shitting under capitalism.
She thinks the school's location makes it vulnerable. It's not far from an open drug scene and blah, blah, blah. The sale of drugs has always been visible in our neighborhood. The school has introduced some measures to improve the situation. Among other things, the janitor starts half an hour earlier to remove rubbish and yeah, we're combating the situation. Our janitor is just working overtime to remove all the bullshit. Again, this is, you're starting in the wrong end of the problem. They have removed a tennis table.
Get a pay raise there. Yeah.
They've removed a table tennis table that was used to make drugs, whatever that means. Probably to sort of like roll joints and stuff, and probably like cook their heroin or whatever. Yeah, you can see this is probably the table tennis stuff. Yeah. All right. Headmaster requires several measures. Blah blah blah. A high fence has been erected around the kindergarten in Hausmannsgade. Well, at least they didn't get into the kindergarten, right? Which is located near the school due to the same challenges. So, little Johnny at 4, he gets a fence, but when you get to 6 years old, you're just gonna have to deal with the syringes. I mean, I'll be honest, I do remember growing up that going to certain places, right? There were like, if you go into certain bushes, you knew you could probably find syringes, right? And you were told not to go in there.
Yeah, I was told that too. Certain places or parks where you'd have to watch out.
But it was never a thing at the schoolyard, right?
No, I mean, syringes is not a part of character building, I think.
I don't think so either.
I mean, of course, people were afraid of like you'd step on them and you'd get AIDS. That at least that was that time, right?
It was that time, yeah. Yeah, I do explicitly remember my mom telling me if you step on it, you get AIDS. I feel that we are alone in this. There's no help to be had. So here's the kindergarten that has the fence. Oh, this looks like some like Soviet photo, right?
It's a concentration camp.
Yeah, it is. And the graffiti and just like the concrete and the glass and oof, yeah. I love modernity. It's great. let's see. Do you believe that things will improve when the park opens again? It's hard to say. As a school, we appreciate that the local environment becomes a more attractive place for families with children, but we're unsure who will use the new park. I guess the junkies are just going to migrate back to the park when it opens again. Let's see here. The communication advisor of the district from the district says that it has limited means to improve the conditions at the school. We used the money for wrong programs, so we can't really deal with this. We have followed up the case as far as we can. We've taken away tables and benches as requested and introduced daily security services, increased cleaning around the park, and written and verbal dialogue with the police, she writes in an email. At the same time, she emphasizes that the area is burdened. It's the word she uses. We double check the translation here just to make sure that we're not missing any subtlety. Nope, burdened is a quite apt word. We sincerely hope that the sum of measures over time and the newly opened park in the spring of 2024 will give the area a boost and that the extra challenges the school now has will decrease. Well, I mean, the only thing that's going to change this if you chase off the junkies. I'm not sure if just having a new park will chase them away, because that's been sort of the case before where they just come back. You need another program, quote unquote, to basically drive them away from that park, because that's happened many times in Oslo where like the city basically goes in and says, all right, you keep congregating in this park, we're just going to chase you away and use the police, and then they just go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, they take the path of least resistance usually. That's how you have to think about it. I mean, if it's easier to use the park than to use the school, and of course, yeah, I would assume the park would work.
Obviously, I mean, as a junkie, you'd probably just go back to the park when it opens again. But do you want them in the new park?
Yeah, ideally not. It's a bit depressing to think of it this way. It's like the point of this park is just to be some kind of like junkie assembly yard or something.
You have to keep them somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you do. So I don't know. I
don't know.
I wish I had some
sad.
solutions
Yeah,
outside of like
sad.
vigilante justice or something.
Let's see here. Believes drug addicts should have their own place to stay. Yeah, I agree. They should have their own place to stay. I'm not against drug addicts. I'm worried that they are not being looked after in a good way. To think of those who have to do their homework in the schoolyard, it's not worthy. Let's see here.
I don't know if I worked at a school and I saw these people dropping needles in like the places where 6-year-olds are supposed to be. I'd probably be against drug addicts.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a weird position to take, really.
This is a bit of an older article, and it says that this weekend is the autumn holiday, which is a week where kids usually get a week off school. I'm already dreading the sight that will meet us after the holiday, she says. When the junkies have had a whole week to just destroy the schoolyard.
Yeah, they're quite productive when they want to.
They are. When it comes to shooting up drugs, they can really get going. There is one more there's actually two more articles. There's one more article on sort of the teacher violence, and there's one on there's been a lot of articles being written by parents who are talking about how private schools are becoming increasingly the choice that people go to, because the public school just keeps, like, if your kid for whatever reason cannot fit into what the public school is. I'm saying public school to Brits, that probably doesn't mean anything, but state schools, if the state schools cannot provide for your kid any good education, people are fleeing to the private schools. And that might be a lot of different reasons for it. Like a lot of these schools tend to be, what you'd call, I guess the Americans would kind of call it like granola schools, right? They're a bit more like, oh, you don't get a grade, you just get, a smiley face. That's the meme, right? But for some kids, that's the way to go, right? Not all geniuses are bred the same way. Like some people really take well to the standardized testing model, but other kids are productive in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's worth it for a lot of people to use these private schools. I mean, I don't have enough experience to really say anything. I know they're
I
quite
don't know much.
constrained.
I
Like,
only know that I've had friends who at some point went to private schools, right? And they were seen as, you know, a bit weird because they uh well, originally, right? Because the problem is that if you go to these private schools and then you try to re-enter state schools at, let's say, high school, it's quite difficult because you're basically changing social circles. Um and you're the weirdo who's coming from a different cultural background, right?
yeah, I
Um
think so. I'm just, it would be something to look into if there's some private schools that are actually based or at least better than the public thing. But if it's just like you said, this
I
kind of
know
like
there
smiley
are. I have
face,
looked into it around where I live, and there are a couple of like Christian schools who seem, you know, the closest thing to based you can get. But the problem is that they still have to follow, you know, the state mandated curriculum, right?
they do,
Um,
and they're
but
limited in their
they could
budgets
be able to
also.
sort of like skirt the lines a bit and just kind of tick the boxes without really going uh deep into the gender studies, right?
Yeah, good point.
All right. So, do you have any final comments on this journey through the life of a teacher in 2023?
I think we covered most of it. I mean, like I said, I do know people who have been in this stuff and who are outside of Oslo, so I can confirm it does seem to be an escalating problem with people who like the violence is escalating, and the teaching candidates don't know how to deal with it, and it's a kind of a result of both a lacking education and the fact that they've grown up in ways where they're just not accustomed to how to deal with that at all. Really, almost with the promise that they would never have to deal with this in their lives, and now they're kind of stuck with it. It's kind of depressing, to be honest, but it's also it's good for us, I think, in the long run. I at least hope that it's in a sense some people get red pilled by this stuff. Though, of course, reading these articles, it doesn't look like that actually, which is even worse.
Well, it's the problem is that it gets framed, it gets talked about, and it gets sort of repackaged all the way as a quote unquote systematic problem, right? As you said, if we just had an app, right, we could fix teachers being kicked in the shin. But that's not really how it works, right? And until the conversation and the vocabulary evolves to a level where we can break free from this, you know, we need more government programs to solve the other government programs that aren't working, it's not really going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and I forgot to comment on it, but you see that the articles are coded in this sort of very apologetic
They
language with
are.
regards to the
Yeah.
students. Is that you have to, when you talk about this stuff, you can't just say that, okay, the students are committing violence. You have to say that they're committing violence because of alienation and because of lack of boundaries at
Problems
home
at
and
home,
yada, yada,
etc.
yada.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's always like these excuses that are sort of packed into it. You can't just say that they're, okay, they're getting more violent now. That's just the
Oh.
fact. Like, okay, there might be various reasons for that, but it's not really that interesting to go into. It shouldn't happen. Like, this should just not. It's not acceptable.
Shouldn't happen, and the
And
teacher should be able to deal with it if it happens, right? That's what we're
yes,
talking about here. We're not talking
absolutely.
about, you know, how sad it is that someone's having a rough time at home, even though that might be a factor, right? But you have to couch it in that language to be able to pass through sort of the filter, right?
Yeah, and of course, they're always going to have a rough time at home. I mean, they had a rough time at home 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. I mean, you were still expected to not hit your teacher at that time, so it doesn't matter really. But it's like this kind of very selective approach to this. Like I talked about the inconsistency between like the student's experience and the teacher's experience, and it's the same thing with like let's say they talk about this. We get into this kind of Me Too feminism stuff where they talk about this kind of like teach kids not to rape or whatever, teach boys not to rape. You know, you'll have that standard where it's like you just put all the blame on men for sexual violence and sexual harassment. But when it comes to this kind of stuff where it's like students who are hitting their teachers, it's like, okay, well, we shift the blame to systematic problems. We can't just tell them not to
Right.
do this. So it's these kind of exceptions and inconsistencies that are, it's very hard to live with, honestly. It's confusing.
Yeah, it is. It's And it's hard to navigate as well because it feels like, it's a bit of a minefield. And as Hello says, the teachers who generally stay can't allow themselves the clarity that allowing the discussion to grow would give. Well, that's the problem. This can't come from the inside, right? It's going to have to come politically from the outside, or it's going to have to either, break to the point where the parents just take their kids elsewhere.
Yeah, but it can get really bad though if you look at the state of, say, American public schools. I don't know how
it's a long way to go.
what's the floor here? I don't know if there even is a floor. It just seems to be getting worse and worse, and like nothing's getting done. Everybody's just taking their shit and leaving, and as long as they can do that, then it's not going to change.
No, at least for the people who have the resources to take their shit and leave, right? All right. We're at 1 hour and 30 minutes, and I think that's time to wrap it all up. Thank you, everyone, for watching. As always, Luddic Path, your plugs.
My plugs, well, yeah, check out praxarchy.com. We feature articles now. I mean, we've assembled some articles from the academic agent who's been talking about the JQ lately. If you haven't read his article on, not the JQ, but the JQ-IQ question.
Right.
It's been a bit of an interesting ride. We have Aaron McIntyre on there now, who's going to have his articles featured there.
Distributors just wrote one on like movies.
Yes, exactly. There? That's another good one that's there now. Last Morgoth article is there. We have Dissident Nomad who's written a good article on the British economy. So Radlib has written some things recently. So I mean, if you want to catch up on what's going on and you need like one place to do that, you should check out praxarchy.com. So that's my plug.
Great. If you're not following me on Twitter, you can do so. Twitter handle awalrus. If you haven't liked, commented, subscribed, done all that, please consider doing so if you want to support this channel. The ad money isn't that great, but it helps cover for the cost of StreamYards, etc., and some of the time that we put in. So please consider doing that. I think that's it. Yep, that's everything I want to mention for now. We'll see you all next week, and until then, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.